Welcome into Eye on Northeast Kansas, the podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Bruner. This is where we recap some of the top guests you have seen on Eye on Northeast Kansas, the TV show. It comes to you streaming live 4 o'clock Central Time, Monday through Fridays from our WIBW TV studios in Topeka, the capital of the great state of Kansas. And it is almost time, folks, to make your voices heard at the polls. Some of you already had, because of advanced voting has been open for a couple weeks now in Kansas ahead of our August 6th primary elections. One of the marquee races, well, actually two of the marquee races on the ballot, the Republicans and the Democrats seeking the nomination in the state's 2nd Congressional District. It is an open seat. The Republican incumbent Jake LaTurner has opted not to seek re-election. He did it a bit late in the game, so it's been a bit of a scramble as we had 5 Republicans and 2 Democrats file for the seat. You have heard from all 5 of those Republicans here on the podcast and on our show. We have had them all together in one place for a forum, along with the Democrats. They had a forum as well, and now they have joined us for some one-on-one time on the red couch. So we want you to hear from them right here on the podcast. Let's start with Democrat Nancy Boyda. Welcome to you. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this on behalf of the voters. Thank you.
You actually held this seat about 16 years ago.
I did.
And what made you want to try to return?
Right. Because I am so concerned about what's going on in our country, and I don't care who you talk to. I was just talking to some of the guests here today. I don't know exactly why, but everybody is so concerned about the state of our country. I'm concerned that we're losing our democracy. And when I look at it, Melissa, I'm the only person in 30 years, you've heard me say this, and there's a reason that I'm the only person, the only Democrat in 30 years to have held this seat, and it's that I am a very moderate, very independent candidate who will do what it takes to break with her party if she needs to, but do what it takes to get things done. So I have watched painfully for 16 years, candidate after candidate after candidate come in, they try hard, they are all good people, you would love them all, they're all smart, they're all wonderful, and they lose pretty much by 15 points every time. And so Matt was asked by our party to run, and you've heard me say many times, I like him, everybody likes Matt. But he is a very good Democrat, and the good people of the 2nd District are not going to elect a very good Democrat. Only 1 in 4 people in the Kansas 2nd District are Democrats. That means 3 out of 4 are not Democrats, and they want somebody who is much more moderate. So with the country the way that it is, I just literally could not sit and watch another good Democrat, another person who I like, get up and get defeated. This is not the time to put in a rookie. May I just go on to one other subject right now? Okay. So if we take the example of immigration, I saw that you and Matt talked about that yesterday. So I very visibly broke with my party regarding immigration and said, if we don't do something now, there's going to be this humanitarian crisis on the border. And it pains me to say that I was right, but in fact, we have a humanitarian crisis on both sides of the border. So if you listen to Matt, here's what people in Kansas are so concerned about. Ronald Reagan in 1986 said, we're going to do amnesty for millions of people. It's going to be a really, really good thing for our country, and trust me, we're going to take care of everything later. And since then, all these politicians have stood up and said, we're going to do this, and it's going to be really, really good for America, and trust me, we'll fix it later. Well, people, when I was in office 16 years ago, they're furious. It's like, what do you think we are, stupid? You said the same thing over and over again. So where Matt would say, well, we need to fix the border, and it's like, no, there's no but. The border security comes first. And then there's a big period after that. You take a big sigh. Yes, we have border security first. And then, in this bipartisan immigration bill, border security, and then you start talking about visas, and then you start talking about a path to citizenship, and then you start talking about what are we going to do with the people we're here, and you get another extreme over here with Derek Schmidt, who says we're going to deport 10 million people.
Where do you feel that you as one person can make a difference, though? Because when you say all of this, the struggle becomes with the way Washington is, okay, if you're not going to be with your party, how are you going to be able to work with them? Because they'll say, well, she doesn't really want to work with us, but yet you're a Democrat, so how are the Republicans going to want to work with you? So where do you feel like you'd be able to make people listen to the middle ground?
Right. So basically, I cannot be the only one. I think everybody is so very tired of being so partisan that in fact there will be a call. I will not be the only one. So I don't say to somebody, I haven't said to you, I'm going to go show you that, I'm going to go work across party lines. I've already done it. That's who I am. And there are people who are there who will work across party lines.
The flip side is, if it hasn't changed in 16 years, why do you feel that's a good point and attitude to bring back? Something from then, when we're talking about people now saying we need a new generation.
Well, to be honest, Melissa, I wish we had a younger person. I wish we could to pass the torch. Seriously. The fact is, we're not ready for a rookie at this point in our nation's history. I am not willing to let a rookie try to do this and lose by the same 15 points that Patrick Schmidt lost by, that Michelle de la Isla was a great candidate, lost by 15 points. We just know what's going to happen. Matt is a very, very good guy. Everybody likes him. I like him. But the 2nd District is not going to elect a good Democrat. They haven't before, and they won't this time either.
We appreciate you being here. August 6th is primary election day. You've heard from all the candidates. All the interviews are on WIBW.com. Good to have you here. Appreciate having you here. As she mentioned, Nancy Boyda did hold this seat previously, 16 years ago. She served one term. A political newcomer is challenging her for the Democratic nomination. Let's hear from Matt Kleinmann. One-on-one time with you today. Matt, welcome to you. Why did you decide to seek this seat, and what have you been doing before deciding to run for office?
Yeah, so first off, thanks for having me back. It's a pleasure to be here. And, when the Democratic Party reached out to me, they asked me to run this race. And they said, Matt, we think you have the track record of somebody who not only you care about your community, you've served your community for over a decade, making sure that there's access to affordable housing, fresh food, making sure you clean parks and safety in our streets and sidewalks. And also, this is a race about our future. This is a race about the next generation of leadership. We heard Joe Biden talk about passing the torch to the next generation. So I wanted to run for Congress because I felt like this is my community. I wanted to make sure that we had access to the things we need. And I believe firmly that we're not getting that right now in Congress. We're not getting that from our representatives. We need to make sure that we have access to affordable housing, lower the cost of child care, make sure that our seniors aren't struggling to go back to work because our Social Security is falling apart. These are the things that I care deeply about, and this is the kind of work I've been doing at a policy level, working with communities and making sure that working families have what they need to thrive.
How do you strike that balance on the federal level, though? Because while it's nice to say we need our share of the federal government pie in terms of grants and aid and those sorts of things, at the same time you hear this call to limit the tax burden on working families, that's what's really been hard on people and why they can't afford those things. So how do you strike that balance?
Well, you start by not renewing the Trump tax cuts from 2017, which has increased taxes on our working families. We see how the corporate tax rate has continued to drop, and it's balancing our national deficit on the backs of working families. I don't think that's right. I think we shouldn't be doing what Project 2025 calls for, which would increase taxes on a family of four making less than $168,000 a year by $6,600 a year. That's not right. We should be putting money back into our communities, making sure that we're supporting our schools, making sure that we're passing housing policies so that first-time homebuyers have access to the American dream. This is the kind of work that we need at a federal level, and this is the kind of experience I have.
What do we do about immigration policy and reform? It's a key issue that seems to bring out differences between Republicans and Democrats. We're also in a state where there is somewhat of a need and or reliance, if you will, on migrant worker populations when we think about the agriculture industry.
So we know that, first off, half of our entry-level farm workers on H-2A visas are undocumented immigrants, right? And we have a huge surge recently in our immigration at illegal crossings, but that surge is down 40% right now. It's because Joe Biden took executive action to limit the amount of crossings, and it's because they're using regional collaboration. At any level, you need to get to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is not building a wall that burdens our taxpayers with more dollars and it increases the cost of goods because now we don't have workers who are able to work those jobs. If we're going to have a serious conversation in our country, yes, security is first and foremost, but we also need a pathway to citizenship. There's a study that just came out this week in the state of Kansas. undocumented immigrants are contributing to our tax rolls by $200 million. Where's that money going to come from if we take our communities apart? There are families who have, this is the only home they've ever known. And to rip them apart, I think it's cruel. It's not our Kansas values, and it's not who we are as a state, and it's not who we are as a country. I firmly believe we can have a secure border, but we need people who are actually caring about it. Trump tried to kill the bipartisan, he actually did kill the bipartisan immigration deal that the Senate Republicans put together with the Democrats, and the House Republicans on Trump's orders killed that deal. I don't think that's right. We had an opportunity to have bipartisan immigration reform. The only reason we didn't is because one political party wants to have a broken system that they can run on. And so I think it's time for us to actually have leadership in Congress. It's time for us to have a Congress that's not having some of the lowest passage of bills because they're not doing the work. They only want to talk about it. It's time for us to have leadership who actually knows how to get things done.
How do you get people to the polls, especially in a state like Kansas, where the greater number of registered voters are Republicans? In a primary, you have to declare for the Democratic Party. So how are you working to actually get people to the polls to participate in your race, regardless whether they vote for you or your opponent? Just get there and participate in the first place. You
have to remind people. You have to remind them that there's an election. You have to give them a sense of there's a way to plan for getting to the polls and let them know that a primary is coming up on August 6th. Early voting is going to wrap up on August 5th at noon. Some folks have already applied for advanced mail ballots, but that period has passed now. For our perspective, at least in our campaign, we're organizing. We are building a coalition. I've been endorsed by the Kansas City Star. I've been endorsed by the AFL-CIO in Kansas, the UAW 31, Tri-County Labor. We have a huge number of folks turning out in support for our campaign. And we have a lot of young people involved. The Kansas Young Democrats endorsed our campaign. The Crawford County Young Democrats are doing an incredible job knocking on doors, getting people excited about electing not just a congressman who's going to represent them, but also a president in November who's going to turn back the sort of extremism and the hate rhetoric that we see at a national level.
Well, you said the date. August 6th is the primary. Matt Kleinmann, pleasure hearing from you again.
Thank you,
Nancy
Melissa.
Boyda will be here tomorrow, and the vote, August 6th, is the date. Appreciate you being here. It should be an interesting race. We will find out those results and be following all of the numbers on the Republican side, the Democratic side. We have some Shawnee County Commission primaries, several state legislative primaries, all of that on WIBW.com, streaming coverage for you and on air, all on Tuesday, August 6th. Join us for complete coverage. Before that, what do you need to know ahead of the primaries? Kansas Secretary of State Scott Schwab joined us for some reminders. We appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Honored to be here again. Thanks for having me.
How have things been going so far leading into this primary?
A lot quieter than normal.
Yes.
So there's not as many contentious primaries across the state that we normally have. There's not the constitutional amendments we often have. And so voter turnout and engagement is a little bit less than normal. But outside of that, things are going incredibly smooth. And we're not having quite the misinformation attacks that we've dealt with in years past yet.
When we talk about comparing, we were saying beforehand, you really can't compare this primary to 2 years ago in August.
Correct.
Because that is when we had the value of them both amendment. How is turnout running so far?
So far this year, and I got notes, so I'm going to look at it, forgive me for that, but it's about 39,000 ballots cast so far with a week left. This time 2 years ago, there was 95,000 ballots cast.
So that shows the difference when there's a hot button issue.
And that when folks say, well, what do you do to drive voter turnout? Really, it's the issues and the candidates that do it. I would imagine the 2nd Congressional District, because there's a contested primary here for Congress, it'll have higher turnout, whereas in some areas like Wichita does not have very many contested primaries. A lot of folks may not want to go out in the heat.
We do have, exactly, District 2. Is that probably where you're going to expect to see some higher turnout, both Republican and Democratic side? Because there are primaries on both parties.
That's what will drive it. And there's definitely, the candidates are not alike. There are drastic differences in positions they've taken, and that drives voters out to vote, whether it's social issues or economic issues. So, yeah, I would imagine the second's going to be significantly higher, especially on election day.
We have hosted forums on both sides, and you're right. It's been interesting to get to hear from the candidates and hear their differences and similarities on some of the different views. One thing we want people to check this year, though, I would say would be on My Vote Info, would be their state Senate district. This is the first time, and there are some changes there.
Yes, there's a couple changes on the local level. You may want to go, you can go to kansasvotes.gov, and again, that's our website, doesn't say .gov, not ours. And you can go down to the county and you can see your sample ballot and what district you're in, because redistricting it 4 years ago does change who your state senator is going to be. And also some counties like Wichita significantly increased the number of polling places they had to reduce lines. So your polling place may have changed this time. So that's a good time to go check and make sure everything's in line for you to go vote on Tuesday if you're doing it in person.
And I have been seeing some, especially the Topeka area state Senate districts, some differences people and the candidates have been talking about. Who can participate in this primary? If we're a registered voter, what's the second piece that we have to keep in mind in a primary?
So if you're a registered voter, but you're an independent, you are registered, so you can affiliate with a party when you go to vote. And then, so if you want to engage in either the Democrat primary or Republican, all you have to do is say, I'm going to be a Republican for this election. Then later on after the general, you can unaffiliate if you want to.
But you have to make a choice.
You do have to make a choice. So in some places, I don't know of any place across the state that has a ballot measure on the ballot this time. So there probably won't be too many unaffiliateds going out unless they want to engage in the primary.
And we have been checking with our 17 surrounding counties that we focus on, and you're right, no ballot questions that we have seen. But you can't change your affiliation.
No,
at
you
the
cannot.
polls.
You cannot. You could, if you're unaffiliated, you can affiliate. Once you're affiliated, you're stuck till after the general. And that was how the decision the legislature made years ago, because people would party switch to engage in the other party's primaries and switch back, and both parties didn't want to do that. And so, and the other thing I would like to say that's really important, today's the last day to request your mail ballot. Please don't mail it. Please use the drop boxes or drop it off at a polling place, because the mail has so many issues right now. I'm not confident it'll show up by Friday of next week.
I was going to say, what is the rule? Because regardless, it needs to be postmarked 7 p.m.
Correct.
Election day, which is August 6th. Next Tuesday.
And then your ballot will be counted if it shows up at that clerk's office by Friday. But we're getting ballots still in counties that have been legally cast last year and 2 years ago, because most of our mail leaves the state of Kansas, and you're giving your ballot to the federal government that's not going to care about your ballot as much as your neighbors do. And so use a secure drop box, use any advanced in-person voting place or any election place in your county on Tuesday on election day.
So you don't even have to go to your own polling place
you
on
don't
Tuesday.
have
You
to
could
just
go
to any. You can go to any. If you're at work and there's one closer, you can just drop it off there and they'll make sure it gets tabulated.
Because slow postal service is not an acceptable excuse that the canvassers are going to take.
They can't. It's the law's the law, and it's frustrating. I call them USP. They're United States Postal. They're really lacking on the service side as of late. And so in the report this month, they even confirmed that.
Very
so
hardworking men and women who are out there. It's not all their fault.
It's not. It is. There's a funding issue there. There's a training issue there, and there's just been cutbacks in the processing center, which just creates choke points across the nation.
So deliver by hand is the advice.
That's the advice. Treat it like cash.
myvoteinfo.voteks.org is where you can go get that sample ballot. That's another direct line to do so. We'll have the link online. Scott Schwab.
And kansasvotes.gov.
kansasvotes.gov. That is their site too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you
Glad to
being
be here.
From rocking the vote to a rock star, I sure enjoyed an interesting conversation recently with Melissa Etheridge. She is a native of Leavenworth, Kansas, and she's out with some new music along with a new docu-series. They were recorded at Topeka Correctional Facility. This, she says, is a project that has been decades in the making. I was able to ask her a bit about her inspiration for it.
The federal penitentiary was just a few blocks from my house. And in 1968, when I was 7 years old, Johnny Cash came and performed there. And I thought that prisons were a place of great music at the time or something. And then when I was a few years older, in my teens, I actually went into all of the prisons and performed different types of entertainment. And it was always so appreciated, and they were such a great audience and inspiring.
I'm a pretty woman. I'm not broken.
When you watch even the previews that have been released, when you sing that song, I'm Not Broken, and the women join in singing that song, what was that experience like for you?
Amazing. I didn't know what the concert was going to be like. I had worked with the warden and the prison. We had talked about it for a couple of years. I kept saying, okay, are you going to allow them to get up and express themselves? Are they going to be made to sit down? No, we're going to let them do what they want to do. I was like, okay, because I can get an audience very excited. That's my job. And she was like, you go ahead, you do whatever you do. I'm like, okay. And I said, I'm using some colorful language in this song. Is that okay? I don't want, no, you do what you want to do. And they gave me this wonderful freedom to do what really came from my heart, unrestricted. And singing that song and just seeing the women just going, I'm not broken and I am worth it. And I still love doing it for free people, out here in concerts. And it did better than I could have ever wished for. there at TCF in the prison.
You had mentioned your son's passing. Do you see him in some of those women, and how much does that message need to be said for a lot of people? Because you can give somebody all the support in the world, but you can't necessarily change internally what's going on. And how much are you now motivated exactly to let people know that there are second chances, there are things that can get better?
It was very clear to me that many, if not most, of the women in the prison were all dealing with early trauma in their life that led to some really bad choices, drug addiction, and prison. It's just this constant, it's all the same, different ways, but trauma, drug addiction. And knowing how once you get in that cycle of drug addiction, it is very hard to, people can't save you. I know as a family member, you can't, you want to do whatever you can, but you can't. It's a personal choice. And that person needs to see what it looks like to find joy in life every day. And if I can show that this is possible, you can feel this. No matter what life brings you, you are in charge of your own joy.
This new music was written, obviously, with the prison in mind and with these ladies in mind. How does the message, though, transcend that specific story? What do you hope? And I know that the experience of music is what we individually can interpret things as, but what do you hope people get out of hearing these newest songs that you have?
Well, I've really been enjoying performing the song Burning Woman, which is the song I wrote for the women in the penitentiary. And I love playing it live. I tell people about the concert and the album and the documentary, and then I sing the song. And by the end of it, everybody knows it, and they're call and response, and it's really translates not only from the prison to the all audiences, and I very much have been enjoying it.
Kansas being in the middle, I think a lot of younger Kansans might think, yeah, middle of nowhere. What does your story teach other youngsters who maybe have that dream of being on a world and global stage one day?
It's 100% possible. It does not matter where you come from. And Kansas is a great place to be from. It really is. And I have met some amazing people out in the world from Kansas. And I've met some great people in Kansas. It doesn't mean you have to get out of Kansas. Kansas has many opportunities. And you just be inspired wherever you are.
I do have my full conversation with Melissa Etheridge on my other podcast. That one's called Eye on Northeast Kansas, so you can hear the full conversation by heading on over to there. I'd appreciate you clicking subscribe. Some fantastic stories of mental health journeys, mental health awareness are on the Hear Me, See Me podcast. It's a project we have been working on here at WIBW TV all year long, and all of Melissa Etheridge's thoughts are there. Speaking of second chances and being able to rebuild your life, the Topeka organization Project to Restore is about to hold a second annual fundraising event. It's a relatively new organization, but one that serves a very important purpose, helping survivors of human trafficking rebuild and reclaim their lives. Angie Bowles is the leader of the organization. She paid a visit to tell us about their work. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
We have an event that we'd like to talk about as well, and it just is wonderful that the visit coincided with today because it is an important issue. What are we seeing here in Northeast Kansas when it comes to human trafficking?
You know, I don't really have a lot of the statistics here in Northeast Kansas. Human trafficking is very difficult to track because just when you call in, necessarily that doesn't go to law enforcement. So we are working on that, getting more accurate numbers through the Shawnee County Human Trafficking Coalition and others, other coalitions in the state. So,
but what you do see is the people reaching out are the people reaching out for help.
Yes.
What do you do at Project to Restore, and how many people have you had come through or request assistance?
So we are a long-term restoration home for women 18 and older, women coming out of sex trafficking. And we have been open, this will be 2.5 years, going on our 3rd year, and so far we have served 11 survivors. We have just an occupancy of at the most 4, but it usually averages around 3 at a time. Women are encouraged to stay up as long as they need to, up to 2 years. But a lot of times they think they're ready to to kind of get out there on their own before that. So we definitely are staying full. If we have a bed open, we are immediately turning it over and looking to bring the next person in. So
why do they need support, and what types of support do they need that takes time?
Yeah, great question. So the first 30 days, it's just stability, just safety, food, security, building trust. That's usually the first 30 days. It's just kind of like a quiet period for them. Just then after that, we move into what we call like a growth period, where we're working on what are their needs in terms of trauma, addiction therapy, boundaries, relationships, marriage, just all the mental health, dental, physical. We're providing all of that through the community resources that we have in Topeka and the partnerships that we have here. So,
what are some of the ages of the women that you typically have been seeing, and how long had they been caught up in that life before they come to you?
We've had the youngest 18, and I'd say 32 was the oldest survivor that we served up to this point. And that's usually a good age range for us. If we go a little bit higher, then we want the women to really just get along and they're going to live together for the most part for that period of time.
They're not alone too.
Yeah, they're not alone, and they share a space, and they're fully supported. We have a 24/7 staff. So all of their needs are met, but then at the same time, we're working towards what does that look like for them independence-wise? What does it look like for them to move into a job? What kind of job skills do they need to acquire? Do they need a GED? Those are some of those questions that we individually work with them.
Because how long have they typically been in the lifestyle?
Yeah, we have sadly women, I would say 80% of the women that we have served have been trafficked since they were under 7 years old.
Wow.
I know.
And if they're not getting to you until they're 18, that means at least 11 years there, and then older when they... So that's why they need those skills. That's why they need the support. You can help with the Run and Walk to Restore. I wrote Run to Restore for the alliteration, but you can walk it too. Yeah. It is a 5K event benefiting Project to Restore coming up Saturday, August 24th at Lake Shawnee. Shelter House 1 is where they'll be kind of based around that area. Register by August 5th, so we're coming up on that deadline to receive a t-shirt when you register, and you can find that information as well as more information about Project to Restore if it sounds like something that you would like to assist with. The Project to Restore, that's the number 2.org. I'll have that link on WIBW.com as well. Angie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been interesting to see you from when it first started to now and the difference that you've been able to make.
Thank you for your support.
It's tough work and important work that they do with Project to Restore, so be sure to check them out. We end on a little bit of a fun note. An up-and-coming professional athlete from Topeka. His name is Blaine Warbriton. His sport of choice, bare knuckle fighting. He's had an interesting journey through the sport and is about to make a major professional debut. He visited to let us know about his work. Welcome to you.
Hey, nice to meet you.
So describe bare knuckle fighting. Is it just like no holds barred, no rules, or what kind of skills are you combining?
Okay, so bare knuckle fighting is going back to, this started back in the 1600s. This is what bare knuckle boxing was, the sport of boxing, before they transitioned to the gloves.
Okay.
And see, in the transition to the gloves was guys were hurting their hands. So they were like, okay, well, fights are ending because guys are breaking their hands. And so what they did was they started basically wrapping guys' hands up, turned them into casts, putting a leather glove over the top. Fights now last longer, but with that comes brain trauma. So in bare knuckle boxing, you're taking that out. It's a little more cosmetic damage, less brain damage, safer sport.
You're moving your hands, and I just really want to look at you. Have you ever broken your hands doing
I have not broke my hands.
You have not broken your hands. Okay,
Nope.
but it's not MMA, so you don't use feet or anything like that. It is truly all
boxing. The only difference is that you can actually grab and punch.
Oh. Like physically grab? Or?
Yes, you can grab your opponent by the back of his head and start feeding him shots.
All right. Well, how did you get started in this? And I hope
Okay.
this isn't a tale. There's a police officer over there, so hopefully this isn't a tale of
No. So I started boxing as an amateur when I was 14 years old. Did that up into my early 20s, and then just kind of went from there. Kind of took a little step back, and then the sport of bare knuckle fighting became legalized again in the States in 2018. Now, when that happened, I took notice, and then I got with my coach, Danny Brown, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to like make a comeback into boxing, but I want to go the bare knuckle route. He was like, all right, let's do it. And then we just kind of started making those transitions. It got legalized in the state of Kansas, and then now here we are in the fastest growing sport in the world.
And I made light of it a little bit, but how was it as a teenager that this became a positive outlet for you and a way to channel energy in a good direction?
Yeah, so I grew up in a not so great environment. Like when I was a child, like it was a lot of violence, a lot of poverty, a lot of people just doing whatever they could to survive, drugs, everything. And so once I was able to kind of experience all that, see where my parents were like really like all about hard work, all about trying to get them and me and my siblings out of that situation, kind of really instilled that in you. And then like fighting in the streets, all that nonsense. And then it was just like, okay, how can I do this but like in a more positive way? Like, and then that was when I found boxing, and then it just kind of took off from there.
It's kind of channeling your energy in a way that's going to make a difference. So you're about to make your pro debut. How big of a deal is this?
Okay, so I've actually already had a bare knuckle fight.
Okay.
1-0, one knockout. This is for the BKFC, Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. I got signed with them. For those that don't know, this is what the UFC is to MMA.
Okay.
This is the biggest company in bare knuckle fighting. They're currently talking about putting together a tournament for each weight class with a grand prize of $2 million. Like this is big time, big money, bright lights, all of it.
Well, those bright lights are going to shine on you. The matches start. Do you call them matches or bouts?
You call them
whatever you want. The fun on Kansas City Fight Night is Friday, August 16th. It's taking place in Memorial Hall in Kansas City. I have the link right there for information or for tickets, bkfc.com. Blaine, good luck to you. We look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Oh,
yeah,
I can't wait to come back after the win.
We will see where the sport takes him. It was fun to meet Blaine and hear a bit about his training and get to know him. Good to have you along with us as well. Remember, you can see the video from these segments and from all of our guests on Eye on Northeast Kansas on WIBW.com. You will also find them on our WIBW 13 News YouTube channel. And of course, we always have fun with our studio selfies. See who all paid a visit to the Red Couch on my Facebook page, WIBW Melissa Bruner. Glad to have you here. Glad to have you subscribing and listening. Until next time, we'll see you on the Red Couch.